John, we've had an interesting and wide-ranging discussion this morning about the SDGs. They're an ambitious set of goals. Are they achievable?
I think there's some very, very tangible things in there from the perspective of ethical trade and workers' rights. I mean, if you take Sustainable Development Goal 8, for example, there are many targets under that goal of direct interest to organisations such as the Ethical Trading Initiative. If you take Target 8.5, for example, promoting full employment and decent work for all, including youth, men and women, the disabled, equal pay for equal value. There are some really, really tangible things in there. Likewise, 8.7 on action to end forced labour, modern slavery, human trafficking. Another very, very, very tangible output, and a lot of actors are now getting together in Alliance 8.7, named precisely after this target, to address the problem of forced labour. And of course that target also contains a commitment to end child labour in all its forms by 2025. So these are very, very tangible things. Some things are less addressed in the SDGs. As highlighted today, there is the challenge of supporting workers' representation, workers' freedom of association, and promoting the very importance of things like collective bargaining as part of the social dialogue that's needed to make this connection between growth and decent work. Unless people are paid decent wages, living wages, that will prevent the SDGs from being realised. So that is another gap, attention, I think, to living wages. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It depends on how these things are taken forward. But yes, there are certainly many, many tangible things there, but also some gaps that need to be addressed through the action of different players, governments, businesses, and of course groups like ETI.
And ambitious as they are, the SDGs can't deal with all the issues around labour conditions. So what are the key links to other initiatives that can help them to be implemented?
Yes, I think a key challenge and also an opportunity is to connect the SDGs with other processes that are underway. I mean, for example, the United Nations approved the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights in 2011, and these principles have now become, the main recognised architecture for promoting responsible business conduct, including in global supply chains. And of course, the biggest contribution that business can make to achieving the SDGs, as highlighted this morning, is to do no harm. So respecting human rights is absolutely fundamental. So the UN Guiding Principles enshrining the state duty to protect human rights, the business responsibility to respect, and the whole question of access to remedy when abuses occur, those are absolutely key issues that businesses need to address. So harnessing the UNGPs, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, to the Sustainable Development Goals, that has to be a key priority for all, I think.
Ruth, Oxfam works on issues that span the SDGs. What have you been observing at Oxfam recently in terms of the intersection of the private sector with social issues that impact on workers?
I think for us the key concern with the interaction between business and SDGs is around trying to avoid cherry picking. So we would ask that businesses focus on the impact right across the SDGs and to look at the SDGs holistically, so that we don't have businesses cherry picking what works for them, what doesn't work for them, or that which drives profit, and not looking at how they have a social impact. For example, is there decent work throughout their supply chain? What is their gender impact? What is the impact on climate action?
And how can responsible businesses avoid the race to the bottom, and what do you see progressive businesses looking like?
I think a key issue is about their relationship with government. So a responsible business is one that supports a government's ability to govern for greater good. So when government comes out with legislation that supports increased tax transparency, that raises minimum wage, we would like to see responsible businesses supporting government to do that and not lobbying against that. So we don't encourage a race to the bottom either on tax regulation, on wage regulation. We want to see supportive businesses not only doing the right thing, but saying the right thing and standing up to their peers, so in order to move entire sectors.
Amina, in terms of SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, where does progress look most likely and where does it seem it will be hard to achieve?
Thank you for the question. So on Sustainable Development Goal 8, which talks about sustained economic growth, full productive employment for all men and women, as well as decent work for all, I think the ambition of the goal is quite high. Where we are able to produce some interesting research and results are to look at current trends. So what do the years 2000 to 2015 tell us anything about what the future could look like? And if these current trends were to continue all the way to 2030, where would we be? And ODI has produced a set of global, regional, country level scorecards, and where we looked at employment data in particular in relation to SDG 8 was on the city level scorecard. So we looked at about 20 cities, and for the indicators on male and female employment we had data for 15 for male employment, where we found interesting results were on male employment. It seems that in about 12 cities progress is more than halfway by 2030. So if we were to create the right environment, it is possible that we would be reaching full employment in terms of male employment for a set of cities. But equally, if we were to look at female employment, what we find there is that the rate of progress would need to be increasing in multiple ways. Unless we do that, we will not get to a situation of full and productive employment. Now, none of this kind of data will give us an insight into the quality of jobs, whether these are being held in the informal sector in cities, where really many of the workers do tend to be working in high numbers. And so we only get a partial picture from the data, and it's far from what is needed to achieve the SDG, particularly around decent work, because that would mean improving the quality of the jobs, and currently the data does not allow to say a lot about the global labor force and working conditions. What is also interesting to look at the data that is left out. So the ILO, the International Labour Organization, produces data and prioritizes the number of people that are in the labor force. So that's about 3.25 billion people that are employed as wage salaried workers, employers, or as vulnerable workers, and a good 200 million people who are unemployed, so looking for a job and available for it. What is not being looked at is a number that's 10 times higher than the number of people that are unemployed today. That's 2 billion people, 6 times the population of the United States, where they're out of the labor force, and the good number of people would be able to work and do want to work, but current conditions limit them from looking for work or their ability to take it on. We know very little about how many of the 2 billion people are going to be the part of the global jobs challenge, much further away from what is the decent work challenge that these particular groups of people are facing. What we find very interesting is that out of the 2 billion, exactly half, so about 1 billion, are women between the ages of 25 and above, which means these are women that are likely to be working but not being able to put a number to it, so not working for pay or profit, because that's the definition of someone who is employed. So they could be working mothers, they could be responsible for unpaid care for children and the elderly, and it means that we're still in a position where we don't know really the quality of the work that is being produced in the world, and that's translating in the numbers, like the number of jobs or economic growth that is facilitated through job creation. So while we do create a partial picture of progress through ODI's research, a lot needs to be done, especially in the first 1,000 days of the SDGs. We've just hit the 500 mark, and unless we start early, the costs of delayed action are so high that we fail to achieve the SDGs. And right now we do face a certain amount of pressure and opportunity to get the right data in place, the right standards in place to be ensure that we can capture the progress. Thank you.